Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. This is your extra show for the week. My name is Cammy Bell. I'm your host as always. And joining me on a show which I am certain will be full of joy, mirth, merriment, and just overall great fun is Linwood's Rose, David Marshall. David, how are you?
Oh, full of, all the joys that this world brings to us, just absolutely brimming with delights, as I'm sure you are yourself, mate.
Yeah, yeah. I went on a week's break out to Spain last Sunday, David. So I went up to Ravi's Bar here in Lorette to go and watch the Hibs game. That was terrible.
Mm.
And then I thought it can't be too bad. I mean, I'm watching two games whilst I'm away on holiday, so I'm sure Rangers will try and make up for it. And we had the return leg at Ibrox last night against Jagiellonia, and we did our absolute utmost to make sure that we capitulated a one-goal lead and threw ourselves out of the Europa League. And I'll be honest with you, David, there's a point where you just feel like walking into the sea.
Yeah, and as I said last night on my Twitter, that it's how depressingly predictable it all is. Can see that we've seen that second half play out. I don't know how many times over the last few years. Although I will say to their credit, that was particularly bad, that second half. This team does seem to find ways to reach new heights or new lows, as it were. So, yep, just one more kick in the balls, Cammy.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about last night and the game within itself. I think we owe it to the listeners, Davey, that we'll have to have a talk about some of the wider failings
Hmm.
around the club at the moment, and we obviously have our League Cup kicking off against St Mirren at Ibrox on Sunday. But on last night, I'll be honest with you, I was thinking about the lineup prior to the game. We know that we've had a few key injuries across the course of the last week or so, with Chermiti to Romans has obviously been ruled out. And I was thinking to myself, I don't know how he's going to respond to this.
Yeah.
There's also the element that I don't think that we've seen too much of the new signings to be able to gauge fitness.
Hmm.
And who can we rely upon? And there's another part of me just to enter into all of that wonderful thinking of, do we want to risk Raskan, given the fact that supposedly we had an offer in for Chermiti just before the game. He gets injured, he's out for the season. And Raskin's in a little bit of a different space because we have to sell him in this window because I don't trust him to stay and be able to perform at a consistent level. So does he play Raskin or whatever else as well? So it was a real conundrum. How it ended up was he started with a 3-5-2. Pandering goals, obviously, you would expect. Mikanya, Fernandez, Sterling at the back, Gassama, Asgard, Neil, Raskin, and Yokota with Nadiri and Shankland up top. So it was an interesting lineup. I think when Dan Neil was being looked at, I think a couple of us had said, is he playing a 3-5-2 or is he playing Neil at the back to be able to try and make up for it? But it was the 3-5-2. And I'm going to be honest with you, Dave. I thought that we started the game pretty well. I think that when we got the draw originally, we looked at it and thought, Jagiellonia, I don't really know them. They sound like the countdown conundrum. We should be able to beat them. And they showed us what they were made of last week. But we obviously went into this 2-1 down in aggregate. But I think we were all feeling pretty confident that we could have beaten them at Ibrox. And Rangers, I thought, started well. I thought the shape worked. I actually thought the manager had got that decision right. And I'm not suggesting that it was completely dominant. Rangers did take the lead thanks to a penalty just about 20 minutes. I don't know if you saw this in real time, Dave. As I say, I was watching it in the bar, but I had no idea that there was a hand involved in this. But the cross comes in. He seems to kind of duck down to be able to try and head it, and then he moves his
Yeah.
arm and then moves his arm back for some inexplicable reason. But VAR caught it, to their credit. Rangers get the penalty and launch Shankland hits it away down the middle, and all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, that's a promising start. We just need to be able to build on it. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, you can tell the listeners what happened next.
Yeah, I think to the start, Cammy, I think we started bright enough. And the penalty itself, first, I think Yokota does really well. And in the first half, a lot of what we did well came through his side. My initial reaction was that, oh, this could be, because if you look back at it now, you do see a few of our players react as well. And as like, it's one of those ones, it's either came off his hand or it's came off, his chest or his head or something. And in fairness to VAR, they caught it and it was the right decision. We scored, and I think at that point, we I'd say we deserved the goal. I think Jagiellonia at the same time might feel a wee bit hard done by because they had their chances as well. And I agree with you. I think the shape that we started with last night, it did work to a certain extent. Certainly, we looked better than what we have been the last few weeks. Although that's a very low bar to overcome. But at the same time, they were still creating chances. I'd say they were still playing the better football, even in the first half. The way they were working chances compared to ourselves, where if it wasn't coming through Yokota and the wings, then a lot of our chances were coming from either hoping something came off at a corner or shots from distance. After we scored, it was similar to last week, Cammy, when we get the goal against them early on, and you're looking at going, what could possibly be a tricky tie? We could go on now and get this tie won in the first half, and we don't. And we, I'm sure we'll talk about more, but the changes we make in the second half totally throw off any momentum and shape we have, and we're punished for it. But this has been, a constant issue. We get a good start, we get the goal, and we don't kick on. We don't smell blood. We're almost like, look, well, we've done that. Well done us. Let's take a wee bit of break now.
That's exactly it. It's exactly it. And it's so weird to see, David, because we got to a stage where we were talking about it constantly last season, where if Rangers took the lead, we purposefully look like we're taking our foot off the gas.
Just to add one amendment to that there, Cam, we were talking about it last season and the season before that and the season before that.
Okay, I'll give you that because my point I was going to come on to there was, but it seems like we're just doing the same thing again. But you're right, it's definitely very much history repeating itself. And I'm screaming at the TV because I felt that Rangers, even after the goal, were necessarily playing poorly. I think that you're right. Jagiellonia were able, for me, to play the ball quickly, to find each other, and they could play good first time passes to be able to try and move the ball a lot. I'm not necessarily saying that they were getting yardage with it, but they could move it, and it kept us on our toes. And then again, that continued. So they didn't have a reason to kind of change. I just felt that the intensity from Rangers dropped. And I firmly believe, and I'm happy to be shot down for this if anyone disagrees, but I firmly believe that if we were able to get a second goal between 20 minutes and 45, 60, I think the tie is done. I think that would have been too much for them to be able to come back into it as long as we then get the second. And if we had to go a little bit more defensive minded, okay, I kind of get that. But even with the 25 minutes remaining in the half, before that change that you're right, we'll come on to, we just seem to kind of just almost congratulate ourselves for being able to get ahead, and we that intensity dropped, and now all of a sudden Jagiellonia have something to play for, so their intensity increases, and we seem unable to counter that. And as you rightly said, it is not a new problem, and it's bizarre because when you think about the teams that have played for Rangers across the period that you've mentioned, and the managers that we've had, I don't understand it. And I'm going to label a few things towards Derek McInnes because I think he has to take some share of his blame.
Yeah.
But part of the questions, our very own David Edgar asked Derek McInnes in his press conference when he was unveiled, what do you see as the weaknesses of this Rangers team that you've now, had teams play against? So Derek McInnes has seen this himself, and why he is not at that stage drumming into these players. If you get a goal ahead, get a second. Do not drop levels. Do not switch off. No. Do not relax. And frankly, you've not earned the right to do that by any stretch. But we do get to half time, and Tello Asgard comes off. Asgard, I'm going to be honest with you, Dave, plenty to say about Tello Asgard in previous seasons. This season, I think he's done okay. I think he came back. He could have had one eye on a move, but he is playing with a decent level of commitment, which I've got to applaud him for. And I think that, there is definitely a football player in there somewhere. I know that we talk about his physicality, and these should all be in the plus column for him. Do we question his attitude? Do we question his commitment at times? Yes. And I think that that's fair and valid. I did not think that Tello Asgard had played badly, but Derek McInnes said in his post-match presser that he took Asgard off because he wanted to be able to do a little bit more from the wings.
Mm-hmm.
Replacing him with Ross McCrory. So effectively what he wanted to do was go into a back four and put the wingers a little bit further up. And I absolutely agree with you, by the way, in terms of I thought Yokota was playing very, very well. I thought he was going forward, but by 60 minutes, I think he was dead in his feet.
Yeah.
So I don't understand the contradiction there, because you're taking Asgard off because you want to get more for your wingers. Gassama frustrates the life out of me. I know he does with you as well. Yokota, I think, was playing well, but there's no alternate option to this.
Yeah.
And Yokota ended up playing in 90 minutes. Gassama get replaced with Finlay Curtis. And so you're doing half a plan, but the second half of the plan is not coming off. And Jagiellonia, I think, they were starting to up the tempo a good bit. 5 minutes after, I beg your pardon, it was 65 minutes, they get an equaliser. And at that point, now Rangers are almost in crisis mode. We make an immediate substitution with Raskan and Dan Neil coming off to be replaced by Dragojevic and Cammy Devlin. I don't know if that was born out of fitness or just being able to try and get fresh legs in there, but I don't really see it as a truly effective swap. Then with 15 minutes to go, Miovski comes on for Ryan Nadiri. Nadiri was awful.
Yep.
Gassama comes off for Curtis, as I mentioned beforehand. Lawrence Shankland, who looks like he couldn't have done the length of himself, plays the full game. Yokota, dead at his feet, plays the full game. And it doesn't connect for me. And I understand that the manager is playing with one hand tied behind his back because of the injuries. And we are going to talk about recruitment later on in the show. But it just didn't feel to me like there was any sort of semblance of a plan there. And I think, like you say, we Jagiellonia, you mentioned it earlier on, did have chances. We had a couple of chances, but the second half, we didn't threaten anyone near well enough. Our shooting from outside the box across the 90 was horrendous. A really good chance falls late on to Dragojevic, which I get he kind of puts wide. Miovski misses a header, which it seemed harder to miss than score. But I don't blame him, because he's absolutely shit out of confidence and would leave tomorrow if he could.
Yeah.
We just didn't have an answer.
Yeah, the change at halftime absolutely baffled me, to be honest, Cammy, because I can understand the manager's point of view if he was looking at Asgard in the first half and saying that I'm not getting enough out of him. Which, I find it struggle to disagree with him. I don't think Asgard did a hell of a lot in the first half, but it's what it does overall, though, is taking Asgard off worth changing the entire shape of the team, which worked overall in the first half. We went in at half time with the lead. And the point is as well, we went in at half time and the tie's still level. It's only it's 2-2 in aggregate. We are not going out in the second half to defend a lead. We need another goal to win this tie. And the change for me, and the way he said he wanted to approach it, didn't scream to me as a manager who was going out to win that game in the second half. It screamed to me of a manager who is inexperienced of playing football at this level in Europe and doesn't know how to win a tie like this. He said after the game as well, like, he wanted to bring the wing backs more into the game as well. Now, I'm sorry, but bringing on Ross McCrory to do that, I don't think Ross McCrory is that type of wing back who's going to do the effective overlapping runs and behind the wingers and create something that way. I just didn't understand that at all. The shape totally went. We had absolutely no effective play in the second half whatsoever. And you could see it coming, Cammy. Their equaliser. We were totally off it. The goal when it came, we've seen this goal already this season, and I'm willing to bet that we're going to see it a lot more going forward. Absolutely no pressure on the guy who puts the ball into the box. He's got the absolute freedom of the left wing, ball into the back post. Three Rangers players around the attacker who manages to head it into the net and 1-1. And I'll be honest, from that point, I didn't see us getting back into the game. We looked totally bereft of ideas. The Rascan and Neil substitutions. Again, we could argue over the reason of it, Cammy, but it's getting quite worrying the amount of times or the amount of games now where we've had to change the entire midfield during a game. After they scored, we didn't have a shot on target. Again, we struggled to create very little outside of the Miovski chance that you talk about. And again, yeah, I'm not surprised he missed it. He's hardly played any football for us. Shit out of form, shit out of confidence. As you say, probably doesn't want to be here. The reaction in itself, from leading the game to then losing the goal was pathetic. That was not a team that looked capable of winning a European tie, and that which it should have been, by the way. Now, this team has got many flaws about it, many areas that we still need to strengthen as we sit here on the 14th of August. But that team should have been good enough to beat Jagiellonia over 2 games. They played well. They are not, however, a great side. We have played better European sides, and if we are to continue in Europe, I think we will play better teams in Jagiellonia if we get into the Conference League group stages. But we made it really easy for them. And this point as well, Cam, we go in with a 1-0 lead at half time. We have shown for months now we are not good enough to hold a 1-0 lead. We had to go out there in that second half and get that second goal. Even then, Cammy, I'll disagree to a point that if we got the second goal, that killed the tie. I'm not really sure about that because, and I think Jagiellonia would have known that as well. They were still going to get chances. They were still getting through us with relative ease. I think we had to go looking for a second and even a third last night to kill off the tie. But the approach in the second half, it was the last thing we were trying to do.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. And as I say, I'm not dismissive of them because I think even last week in Poland, I think that they surprised me in terms of technically they look good.
Mm-hmm.
They look well drilled in terms of they look coached, and that is something I want to kind of come on to in just a second. And you're right, they would have had chances, absolutely. Yeah. So I think though that if you get a second and then you decide to go to a back four, and then you decide to tell your wing backs just to sit in a little bit. I'm not suggesting for a minute, right, before anyone goes crazy at me saying that obviously I just want Rangers to set up defensively all the time. But what I would say, though, is that you change the tempo of the game when you then have to invite your opponents to come out to, they need a goal at that stage. And they did, respond well to going down. But like us, they were both still in the tie. So there was still a game there to be won. But you're right, we have come nowhere near having the kind of bravado or gallousness, if you want to call it that, of saying, oh, well, we're 1-0 up, things are going our way. we haven't had that. And that was my point I was saying earlier on, that Derek McInnes has seen that from this Rangers team from outside. Yeah. And so therefore he should know that is a problem that he needs to be able to tackle. But I do want to touch on that point because I think that, you raise a great point there about Jagiellonia. I thought that they looked like they've got a comprehension of a system that they know that when they're punching above their weight, which they were when they were playing against Rangers, that they could rely on a basic setup that they could then adapt. Mm. And Rangers do not have that. I don't think Derek McInnes, and again, I caveat this slightly with some of the injuries and his plans for the next few weeks have obviously been hampered somewhat with the injuries of the current players that he has. And he's made mention before, Dave, if you think about last week, he spoke midweek about we might have another couple of players in by the weekend or whatever, and only one of them arrived. And I think that he's now realising that the transfers won't be is readily available and completed in a timely manner that you can then start thinking of, well, we've got St Mirren in this particular day, and then obviously next Thursday we're in the conference. He won't know what players he'll
Yeah.
have brought in by that stage. But the bottom line, however, is I don't think, and I mentioned this last week on Extra actually, I don't think he's got an idea of what his best 11 is. He's going to have to tailor that now because obviously he wouldn't have expected the Chumity injury, wouldn't have anticipated the Romans injury, both of whom quite clearly had a lot of faith in, given the amount of game time that they'd had and the starts that they've had. And also the fact that Robbins has no competition at left back. But I still don't think that there's a basic design that has to be there, a default, if you want, that he wants his team to be able to play, that he can then alter. The halftime subs, which have been consistent throughout the course of the season thus far, worry me. Because I think they've been born out of necessity because he's not picked the right starting 11.
Yep.
And this is where it feels like we scramble to be able to get a basic formation or style that we want to be able to just lean into it if we absolutely have to. And sometimes that's totally required. If you need to control a game for 10 or 15 minutes or, stop the opposition being able to impress themselves upon you, go to your centre, if you want to call it that. And I don't think he understands what that is. And Derek McInnes has to take a portion of the blame for what's happened last night. Again, we will talk about recruitment, but in the here and now, I think he's making mistakes, and I think that they're costing him at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting, Cammy, that you said a few minutes back that you're not advocating for Rangers to play defensive football, and in an ideal world, Neil would that, but I think we need to start from there. And I think part of the problem is that the manager's trying to play a more attacking style of football that he has never done in his 15, 20-year managerial career. And I said this on our post match after the game last Thursday as well. I think we need to go right back to basics. If for at this moment Rangers need to be a defensive team that plays long ball football, then so be it. Because what we're doing now isn't working. The press that we're trying to play, the amount of space that we're leaving at the back. There was a moment in the first half, Cammy, where their boy hit the post, and immediately after he almost scored again because a cross came into the box, and lo and behold, there's a man free at the back post. He heads it across, and the same guy hit the post, just couldn't get the right amount of contact on it. If he managed to hit that ball cleanly, that's 1-0, and Ty's probably dead there.
Sorry to interrupt, David, but just to compliment that point, I actually thought you were going to mention, I don't know if you'll remember this phase of play in the second half, where they were coming on and they had two men completely unmarked
Yeah.
on our centre and left-hand side. A long ball over the top, and they two could have played it between themselves. They had that much. There was no one near them.
Yeah, there was another there was another situation like that in the first half as well, outside of the one I was talking about as well. That's happened so often. I think we need to go right back to basics. There's a style of play that McInnes has played as a manager his entire career. He's trying to do something right now that he's never done before. We're not good enough to do what he's trying to do, and I don't think he's able to implement it at this point as well. If we've hired Derek McInnes as manager and expect him not to play like every other Derek McInnes team that we ever saw, then that's on us. At this moment, I think somebody needs to say to him, just do what you know you can do, because what we all thought we were going to get, whether we were, for Derek McInnes coming or against it, was a team that would be difficult to break down and solid at the back. And we're an absolute bomb scare at the back. We can't score enough goals and we cannot keep a clean sheet. Well, let's get that one sorted first, because we have seen that he can do that. He can set up teams that don't concede many goals. So let's get that out the way first and foremost, and then worry about going forward, because that's where the damage is getting done. If you can't keep the ball at your net, you're not going to win many games. I don't know, Cammy. It's all very depressing. I don't really know where we go from here. The signings that we're hoping come in between now and the end of the window, really need to hit the ground running. We're hoping that these 3, 4, 5 players that we've been told we're going to bring in between now and the end of August are going to make the difference. I'm not convinced about that. I think this team's just lacking in quality throughout. I think the recruitment that we have brought in hasn't addressed the major problem areas of the team. And the point is as well that we are still, paying the price for failures of recruitment past. I'd say going way back to the summer of Michael Beale, where we let him have free rein, and what this new ownership did last summer, and even in January, Camry, when we got the big sell after Danny Rowe came in, saying, right, listen, we know we made a mess of it with Russell Martin. We know that. We hold our hands up, but we know what we're doing and we know how to fix it. I don't think that's proven to be the case either. The fact of the matter is that we are in a lot of trouble right now.
Yeah, and the recruitment is a complete shambles. So it was beautifully highlighted as well because let's face it, David, with Rangers, it doesn't rain, it pours.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided that the easiest thing to be able to, give the Rangers fans a bit of a laugh was Stuart Drio was at Ibrox last night with us looking to be able to bring him in for around about £7 million, I think was heard. And so the assumption was, okay, fine, maybe we bring him out at half time and he gets a chance to see everybody and all that. And then news started to break that the deal broke down. Now, I've heard loads of different supposed rumours about this, as I'm sure you have as well. But effectively, what seems to have happened is that he failed his medical, or there was a concern with his medical, and we wanted to look at it again, potentially get a second opinion on it. And because he wasn't going to be readily available, it looked like it was going to be up to about 4 weeks, if not a wee bit longer, until he was going to be ready. Apparently, we went back to PSV and said, because he's not ready now, we want to lower the bid. PSV refused, and the deal was completely scuppered. So, again, no idea as to why we've taken a week or so to be able to establish that. Don't know why the hell he was even at Ibrox if we had any kind of form of concern with that, unless he's doing his medical in the blue room. But again, another disaster. We are now supposedly close to submitting a £10 million bid for Kevin Kelsey, who is playing across at Portland Timbers. This feels a bit like the reaction to the Chermiti injury. The bottom line, however, is I cannot trust this recruitment team any longer. You're absolutely correct. This is not a problem that's come out of this transfer window. This has been years in the making. It would not surprise me one iota, Davey, that going in the hope that we can beat St Mirren this weekend, that before or very soon after this transfer window closes, the recruitment team, the setup has changed with people leaving, etc. Because what they are delivering simply isn't good enough at the moment. Now, I don't want to contradict what I've said in the last couple of shows. I'm not made my mind up yet definitively on any of the new signings. But the problem that we have at the moment is that we seem to be able to bring in players just now who can't be as readily available. We're shoehorning players into positions that we're not brought in for, or asking them, as you said earlier on with Ross McCrory, to do things that is not why we bought them, and not the, if you want to call it, the pro forma that we are looking for. You're not signing a player to be able to do that, but now as soon as he puts pen to paper and gets in the team, now you're saying to him, oh, by the way, can you start playing more attacking football, which, I don't blame the player for that. Again, if recruitment feel that that's something that they want from him, don't sign him if he's not capable of doing the role. So right now, I think that the real focus is split three ways between the board with this throwing good money after bad, because we continue to be able to go and spend 5, 7, 10 million pounds as part of what we were talking about in terms of transfers, but we're spending it in the wrong places, on the wrong personnel. The recruitment team for me are very much my centre of focus just now, because I do not think that what we brought in at the moment is what we need it to be right now. And they had months to be able to get this in line. When you look at James Tavernier, we had a year to replace him, Davy,
Yeah,
because he couldn't run this time last year.
at least a year. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. But I'm being kind to them, I suppose. And as we've mentioned, the manager is the third area of focus, because I think you've hit the nail completely in the head. He was brought in as a bit of a stoic, pragmatic manager who knew how to be able to set up teams well to make them hard to beat. The amount of 1-0 wins Hearts had last season to keep them in that title run-in was because of the fact that he could go to places and set up solidly. And right now, Rangers, you could drive a bus through our defence. So the fans are rightly scunnered. I'm sure everyone listening to this of a Rangers persuasion is scunnered, because the problems are so widespread. It's difficult to align them in order in terms of where do you fix it, because we can bring players in now that, yeah, it's great to bring in a 8 million, 9 million, £10 million player. I'll never say no to that. But if he comes in and he's either not available for 4 or 5 weeks, how many points are we willing to concede in the title race? I mean, we're already out the Europa League. Do we
yeah,
concede the League Cup as well? Like, how bad can bad get?
yeah. For me, the most disappointing thing since the owners have came in is that they've not improved the club behind the scenes. They've not made us a modern, professional football operation. There are people in jobs behind the scenes at the club who are way out for their debt and have no business at a club like Rangers. The recruitment is an absolute shambles. We just there's people there like, why is Felwell Junior still there for one? You know, why is he still there? Like, that's just utter madness. On the manager himself, it was one of the reasons, when McInnes came in, I was never really high nor low on it, because I was looking at problems behind the scenes and thinking, if we don't sort that out, then it doesn't really matter who we bring in. But on the manager himself, Cammy, I seen a thread on Follow Follow last night saying it's not McInnes' fault, and one of the first replies I seen, I think nailed it in terms of last night's game as well. It's not McInnes' fault for that result last night. His decisions um, directly impacted the result of the game. I think, it's a world that we live in right now, Cammy, where everyone has to be black and white and definitive answers. Where the reality is at Rangers is that it's not black and white. There are faults throughout the club, from top to bottom, from the boardroom, behind the scenes, on the playing field, and in the dugout, and that's just the situation that we are in. My big worry is that we are here now again in August. Where things look to have went south. As you say, we are in survival mode already. Already 5 points behind Celtic in the league, out of the Europa League. And I don't know a lot about this Czech side that we're going to play in the Conference League, but I imagine they're of a similar standard to what we played last night. So I think it'll be a struggle. I don't think it's going to be an easy tie whatsoever. So we're looking at potentially being out of Europe altogether before the end of August, which is an absolute disaster and an embarrassment for the club. There's just so much that is broken. It needs, as I said, from top to bottom, a root and branch fix. We are, and this is maddening to say this in August, Cammy, but there's so much at the club that needs ripped up and started again. We really, really need to look at how we are operating as a football club, identify everything that we're doing wrong, which should be easy because it's pretty much everything, and figure out a plan how we fix it. And if that's going to take a year, 2 years, 3 years, so be it. And that might be a hard sell to the fans, but the fans aren't happy anyway. I think if you talk to the support as adults and say, like, listen, this is a plan for the next 2 to 3 years. This is what we want to do, and this is where we want to be in 5 years' time. The fans, the more sensible ones at least, will be on board with that. If you tell them, listen, we are going to go through some pain, but we have a plan to take us here. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen within a season or 1, 2, 3, 4 transfer windows, but we are going to get here. And we see that incremental improvement throughout the team. which is why, there's a lot of comparison I see getting made online to Derek McInnes' start, to Steven Gerrard as well, where people are saying, oh, well, it took Gerrard 3 years to win the league. It did, but season after season, month after month, week after week, we saw Rangers getting better under Steven Gerrard. Right now, looking at this Rangers team, we look worse than we did last August. Something needs to change.
I think, yeah, there's a really good point in there as well, Dave, where I think I don't want Rangers to be one of these cutthroat employers that, the culture and the atmosphere is completely toxic because everyone's panicking about making a mistake and then getting punted out the door. But I think what we've seen now, and it's been a slow burn revelation for me, but I'm now able to see it, that what I wanted, if we go back 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, was a strong Rangers team that could meet opponents physically, believed in itself, was able to go out there, be almost borderline arrogant in degrees of its confidence. And we failed to be able to make that team materialise.
Yeah.
Now what I've seen is the reason as to why that probably hasn't happened is, as you rightly say, behind the scenes, we've been too soft. We've been too acceptance of degrees of underperformance. And whilst you and I, as laymen and punters on the street, just see this in terms of what happens in the park, it's becoming more and more obvious now that we're just accepting all of that within every level of the club, from top to bottom, as you say. Mm-hmm. And so, like I say, whilst I don't want people to operate and work in an atmosphere of, again, like I say, a toxic nature of fear, I don't want that to happen. What I do want to happen is, and I'll give you an example within my work, Dave, right? And I'm sure you've been in places like this as well, and so is most people listening. Every year you'll do a performance review.
Yeah.
You'll sit down with your manager and you'll say, right, what's been your big achievements? What's been your big wins? When you set out goals 6 months ago, 12 months ago, did you get them? Did you get them over the line? Brilliant. But what you're effectively saying is, year on year, I want to continue to raise my standard. So effectively, if I do the same thing for the next 12 months and I do the same thing for the 12 months after that, I'm technically underperforming because I'm just maintaining a status quo. I'm not looking to better my contribution across each year. I have to set out goals. I have to set out targets. And they'll vary in nature, right, in terms of complexity and difficulty. But ultimately, I have to deliver them. And if I don't deliver them, then I have someone to answer to. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't appear to exist at Rangers, because if you look at the systemic failures that have went on season, there is no one at the top accountable to then turn around and go to these department heads or whomever and say, how efficiently and effectively do you think that your areas are working at the moment? Are we striving for the same things? And I don't believe that operates at the moment. Now, I don't know if Andrew Kavanagh or Jim Gillespie are the guys to be able to come in and start that culture, but that culture should have started months ago. Mm-hmm. And from everything that I know about Kavanagh, I don't believe that he will operate in that type of ruthlessness in terms of just making sure that people understand exactly where the bare medium is. But that falls into that line, I suppose, of, do you remember we used to hear about from Bisgrove about the whole best in class and all of that and stuff, and lovely, fluffy, yeah, that's great, but there's no substance behind it. And that is exactly what the problem is for me. There isn't a substance here within key levels at Rangers to say, are you performing? And if not, what are we going to do about it? Does that mean that you need help in some cases, or does that mean that you need to leave your position in others? And I don't think we operate like that at all, which is why there is this middle level malaise that just is filtered through the various different levels, that no one's holding that accountable to raise it up or to kickstart it or give it some, energy to be able to get it back up and running again. And you're right, Rangers fans have now got three choices, as far as I can see it. We'll do the rinse repeat of, we'll get rid of the manager and then we start again, and then someone else comes in with a whole new beautiful ideology and it'll either work or it won't.
Yeah. The
second option is that we stand by it, and if the train comes off the tracks, is there a possible way of being able to recover it? And that for me is, I would say, about between 3 and 5 key signings that have to be able to come in and lift that entire team. And that's when we then go back to the recruitment team with our zero faith in saying, I don't think you could recruit those 3, 4, 5 players that we need, because right now your track record's horrendous.
Yeah.
Well, the third option is that, as you rightly say, we do, it's very similar to the whole Alec Ferguson for years ago, you don't win anything with kids. You say, I might not win the league this season, but I will win the league consecutively in future seasons. You need time to be able to make this build happen and get structure around it. But right now, we're working on top of quicksand, because there is no solid foundation upon which we can either build a successful operation or a team, or even more so, a team that will win consecutive trophies.
Some laugh, innit?
Dead easy when we talk about it, innit?
No, I mean, you're right. I mean, Cammy, I've been screaming about this for years. Like, even under the old ownership, like there needs to be internally a procedure where we highlight the different departments in the club that work under the football operations and say, this is what success looks like, this is what failure looks like, and this is the consequences for each. And I don't believe we operate like that at all. What the fans are going to do is an interesting point, Cammy, because I think there's a load of us that are just sick of it. Like myself, what I've been noticing is that after games now, that the anger subsides really quickly, and I'm just falling into an apathetic stupor where I'm like, yes, this is how it's been forever. This is, well, it feels like forever. This is how it looks like it's going to be for the foreseeable. And I think, the fans are getting sick of it, and rightly so. This is now, again, middle of August, and we're looking at another season that is over before it even begins. Like, my kids aren't even back at school till next week, and we're facing the possibility of, trailing Celtic by a really substantial lead. Already out of one European competition, going to be really hard to make it to the group stages of the safety net one. And yeah, the League Cup on Sunday, it's going to be difficult as well. It's really looking grim in terms of what the fans are going to do. I don't know, but I feel like a lot of emphasis needs to be taken off the fans. I think, as the manager said himself, the fans have endured a lot and have in fact showed a lot of patience. I seen like a tweet put up by the club in the lead up to the game about, buy your tickets, get behind the team. And I know, listen, it doesn't really matter. It's just a wishy-washy marketing tweet put out to try and punt tickets. But I don't really want to see anything like that from the club. That's all in it together. No, the fans have done their bit. It's time for the club to start pulling their weight.
1,000%. And even when we get to years, and again, we mentioned at the top of the show that this is not a new problem in terms of the situation we face now, but yet we continue to sell like 99% of season tickets, from the fans being able to be there, and they're buying strips and they're buying tops, etc. And you're absolutely right. Rangers fans are putting their money into the club and they're supporting the team. But I think that from that perspective, the club, and I don't think they will, Dave, right? I think you're right. I think that there's a tone which is really difficult to hit, where you're obviously trying to punt tickets for European games and the League Cup at the weekend. And right now, the general feeling is it feels more like a chore than a privilege to go along to Ibrox. And fans will still do it, right? I still think that we'll get as close to a full house on Sunday. So the fans will want to go. Now, I'm not going to lie and say that it'll all be adults who will be at the game on Sunday. I think quite a few kids will be heading along as well, which again is fair enough. I mean, I feel for them in terms of having to go along and watch that, thinking that this is what Rangers is like all the time.
Yeah.
But that's the nature of the beast, right? So I don't think the fans owe the club anything. I think that we've stood by them through many seasons of apathy and abject failure and a lack of response from our commitment to the players. So yeah, I agree with that totally. I think the problem is, and we talk about this all the time, where we don't know what the solution is. Like, what I'll tell you right now is, and obviously we'll talk about Sunday now as well. What Derek McInnes needs to be able to do on Sunday is be able to get a response, and the players need to do that as well. And we can't beat St Mirren 1-0 and think that, right, that's the corner turned, because it absolutely isn't. I don't think a 3 or 4-0 pumping of St Mirren changes that, because I think you're right. I think that next Thursday will be a difficult game.
Mm-hmm.
However, if he loses on Sunday and we go out the League Cup, I think you're going to see some real toxic atmosphere starting to come out at that point. And again, even from some of the narrative that I've seen across social media and, WhatsApp and various other different group chats and what have you, there is arguments going on amongst Rangers fans about who's to blame for this.
Yeah.
And so that's why I mentioned before, I think that there's a much wider focus on just one man, one centre focus, whether it is Derek McInnes or Andrew Kavanagh or Thelwell or Purdy or whomever. The wider picture is far more scary than that. But what I'll tell you just now is, if Sunday doesn't go well, he is going to have a real problem being able to get some of these fans back on side in terms of believing in the team that he's putting out into the field.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's a bit of a no-win situation for him on Sunday, because if he wins the game, then, well, yeah, it's a game that we expect to win, and quite frankly, that we should be winning. If it goes south, then yeah, the heat's going to get intensified tenfold to what it already is right now. I like your point about the fans arguing amongst themselves about who's to blame. Yeah, it's all of them. I mean, it's not just one focus. There's just so much broken within the club where there's not a silver bullet sacking that oh, we get rid of this guy and then things will start to take shape again. It's not going to work like that. Sunday, I'm worried. I agree. I think the crowd will be decent. I think even last night there was over 40,000 in the ground, which I think a good attendance for a game like that, particularly considering how the team have already performed this season. I seen today that the money for the St Mirren tickets have came out of people's accounts today. On Monday, the money is going to come out for the Conference League game. So yeah, the fans are certainly doing their bit as far as that's concerned. Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you, Cammy. I'm worried about Sunday.
Yeah, and I think that it's important to obviously put that into context, right? I think that we will win on Sunday. I don't want to scaremonger people into where it's at, but what we are feeling at the moment, Dave, is what you mentioned earlier on. Is this? I don't know if I'd be angry if we get put out. It's that kind of thing that I think we've discussed it before, of how you're equally shocked and unsurprised in equal measure. Because right now you don't have a belief in this team that you can get. Sorry, I'm going to rephrase that. You don't have a belief in this club that you can get fully behind because of your scar tissue, your track record, recent history, whatever you want to be able to call it. But ultimately, right now, as things stand, and I like to think I'm somewhat of an optimist / probably pretty naive, I need to see Sunday as an opportunity. And if that can start to turn things around and it starts to give some of the players a bit of confidence in themselves, if it can help another chance for the managers to say, right, this is where I want to see some established positions and I need to see trust within some of these guys. This is what I want to be able to do. If it gives some of the newer signings, again, more game time, okay, again, I'm going to treat all of them as potential opportunities. But right now, for me, because of the aftermath of what he could face, Sunday's an absolute non-negotiable. We need to be able to now go out, win, and put on a very convincing performance that can start to see some of these fans getting back on side.
Yeah, that's where I worry, and I don't want to come across as as scaremongering or just a harbinger of doom. I really hope you don't ask me for a scoreline prediction at the end of the show, because I genuinely do not know. Like, I don't see how we win a game right now. Will we go out and thrash Mirren 3-4-0? I don't think so. Could I even sit here and confidently say that we'll just, get by it with a 1-0 win? No, because I have no confidence in us that we will be able to keep a clean sheet, and that's because of months and months of evidence that we've been unable to do so. I think it's going to be a hard game. I think it's going to be a slog. I don't, as you said as well, I don't think Sunday, even if it is a win, will be seen as any sort of turning point. I think it's a case of just go out on Sunday and win by any means possible. That's what this team needs right now. It's a win.
Yeah, I agree. And that's where you hope that you can look at a Rangers team that can start to have a bit of an upturn and play some better football and be able to do that. But, as I think I said to you boys last night, if I was St Mirren, I couldn't wait for Sunday. I'd love to play against this Rangers team right now. And it's up to Rangers to be able to quash that attitude and quash the attitude of players coming thinking that they are more talented, more physical, can bully us into a degree of submission by us standing up to them. And Rangers have that opportunity on Sunday afternoon, and it's down to them to prove them wrong. And that is what they're going to have to do, because I just think that anything else is completely unacceptable.
No, yeah, totally. I mean, the situation we're in right now has been, it's because of the team that we have, and it's only them that can dig us out of it at the moment.
Yes, very true. Well, it will be over to Rangers on Sunday. That will do us for this week on Extra. David will be back with you on Flagship on Monday to unpack the St Mirren game. Look forward to Jagiellonia at Ibrox on Thursday as we enter into the Conference League. I'll be back with you next Friday to unpack that game and look forward to St Mirren again. So it's going to feel a little bit different, but I hope we sound different because we are being buoyed by a good couple of wins under our belt, and hopefully the beginning of seeing something a little bit different. I've got that Mick McCarthy thing in my head, Dave, of, can it get any worse? Oh, it can. I've just got that in my head at the moment. So we'll see. If you'd like to hear more from us at Heart and Hand, please check out our Patreon site, which is patreon.com/Heart and Hand. I will give a shout out to the Manager's Show that Mr. Marshall does so brilliantly, where you boys have just finished the Gerrard era, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, we're just next show we'll be moving on to the start of Gio's reign. Yep.
Okay, cool. So listen, and there's loads of stuff from how that show has went through years and years, looking at some really good times, some low times as well, obviously, but the boys do a magnificent job being able to really give a great breakdown. And I really like it, Dave, because it feels like a little bit like a kind of time capsule type show, because you forget about some of the stuff that happened across that particular period of time. And you boys do a great job of being able to remind us all about that stuff as well.
That is the interesting thing about doing it. It's the things that you forget, or you have, a memory in your head of this is how this time period went, and then you go back and look at it, and it's like, oh no, that actually went a wee bit differently than I remember, both good and bad at times. So yeah, it's a really good show, as you said, Cammy. It's been going for what, nearly since the start of our Patreon, so nearly 10 years now, all the way back to Advocaat's first game. So from every game from 1998 onwards, we've covered.
Yeah, a magnificent job you boys do on it as well. Please head on over to our sponsor site, which is the Rangers Youth Development Company. There's loads of things that you can get involved in there to be able to help continue to support the Rangers Academy, which the RYDC do a magnificent job in as well. You can sign up to the Rangers Lotto, the Union Jackpot, you can get a stadium brick, and there's loads of merchandise on there. And thank you to them for all of their continued support. Thank you to Mike Lee and Paul Myers. And as I say, David will be back with you on Monday with the Flagship as well. Hopefully, a really positive and lovely show. But Dave, I have to thank you for coming on. I know this is a tough stint, and we're all feeling it at the moment and stuff, but thank you for coming on. You've been brilliant.
Yeah, I'll say that was cathartic, and apologies to any of our listeners who I've made look at the toaster in the bathtub and had a wee think about it.
Yeah, but listen, we managed to knock an hour out of it, so yeah, we've done pretty well with that. So listen, thank you everyone for listening. Say David will be back with you Monday. I'll be back with you on Friday. Keep safe. We hope it can get better, and I'm sure it will. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.